Hey everyone, it's Professor Clark, and in this lecture we are going to learn about the past tense of verbs. So we've already learned about the non-past tense, and in this lecture we'll learn about the past tense, and then you'll know all the conjugation forms for Russian verbs. So the Russian past tense is a little different from the non-past tense and most other language past tense forms that you might have encountered. The Russian past tense is actually a kind of adjective, and it indicates gender and number, not person. So it does not have conjugations for я, ты, он, она, мы, вы, они. It indicates gender and number, so it just has 4 forms, not 6. The good news is there is no difference between first and second conjugation. So we form the past tense with a few exceptions that we're not going to worry about right now for all verbs following these rules. The 4 forms are L for masculine, la for feminine, lo for neuter, and li for plural. And what we do is we drop the temyakiznak of the infinitive and add the correct ending, so l, la, lo, li. And that's all there is to it. However, you might wonder, what do we do, for the ya and thi forms? The ya and thi forms take the gender of the person they refer to. So, ya жила, I would say if I'm a woman. Я жил, I'd say if I'm a man. Ты жила, you would say to a woman, and ты жил, you would say to a man. Кто, however, is always masculine, regardless of whom it's referring to. So even if you're saying кто это, and it turns out that that person is a woman, when кто is the subject of a verb, that is always masculine. Вы is always plural and takes these plural past tense forms, even if you're only using it to refer to one person. So you would say вы жили, regardless of whether you're talking to a group of people or just one person with whom you're using the formal form of address. And then remember that there are a few masculine nouns that end in a. For example, papa or pasha, and they take masculine forms just like they do for everything else. So these masculine nouns that end in a or ya take masculine modifiers like moi, and they also take these masculine past tense verb forms. So we would say papa говорил or pasha звонил. Here on slide 3 of the PowerPoint, I have a chart of past tense endings for the verbs понимать, to understand, изучать, to study, говорить, to speak or say, and звонить, to call on the phone. So let's look at them. If the subject is он or кто, we use these masculine forms, so we would say он понимал, он изучал, он говорил, он звонил. If the subject is feminine, so она, or я or ты, if я or ты refers to a woman, we would use the feminine forms. Она понимала, она изучала, она говорила, она звонила. If the subject is neuter, so оно or some neuter noun, and you might be asking, how many neuter verb subjects are there? Well, there aren't a huge number, but they do exist. So let's go ahead and learn the endings. We're going to add this neuter ending, which is lo. So оно понимало, оно изучало, оно говорило, оно звонило. And note that because the endings are unstressed, the endings for она and оно sound the same. Она понимала, оно понимало, because we have an unstressed a or o at the end, and they're both basically going to be pronounced So just remember that if the ending is unstressed, the neuter and feminine endings will sound the same. If it is stressed, they will sound different. And then finally, we have the plural form. So они, but also мы and вы. Они понимали, они изучали, они говорили, они звонили. And of course, there's always the issue of stress. Remember, in Russian, stress is very important and is one of the most difficult parts of the language. So don't freak out about it, but just remember it's important and complicated. So there are 3 stress patterns in the Russian past tense. The most common is a fixed stem stress, where the stress is in the same place in the infinitive, in the non-past, and the past. And понимать is a good example of that. So we have понимать, that stress on that a in the infinitive. And then он понимал, она понимала, оно понимало, они понимали. It remains fixed on that a in all the forms of the past tense. Some verbs have a stress shift onto the feminine ending, so they will be stem stressed in all the other forms and end stressed in the feminine. And this is most common in single syllable verbs. So for example, жить, to live, он жил, она жила, оно жило, они жили. Or быть, to be, он был, она была, оно было, они были. This is not all single-syllable verbs, but it is many single-syllable verbs. So whenever you have a single-syllable verb, watch out for that shifting feminine strong, as it's called, stress in the past tense. And then there are also verbs, primarily verbs of motion, that have a fixed stress on the endings. We're not going to worry about them right now, but just be aware that this will appear later in the semester. And finally, we have reflexive verbs. Some Russian verbs are reflexive. A reflexive verb is where the object of the verb is also the subject, or the subject is also the object, or there's some kind of mutual interaction. So like to wash myself, or we hug each other. In Russian, these verbs are indicated by the ending sia added to the infinitive. So some examples are учиться, to go to school, or заниматься, to study or do homework. So literally you're sort of teaching yourself, studying yourself is what they mean. And the thing to watch out for is that the reflexive particle sia becomes s мягкий знак after a vowel. And so we can see this in the past tense. Let's look at this chart here for the verbs учиться, to be in school or to go to school, and заниматься, to study or do homework. We have он учился, so we just added that ся ending to the past tense, учил, учился. But она училась, it turns into с мягкий знак. Оно училось, они учились. And then заниматься, он занимался, because we're adding the reflexive particle to a consonant, but then она занималась, оно занималось, они занимались. And that is it for the past tense. There is more to the past tense, which you will learn more about later, but those are the primary things to know about the past tense, and you can now put probably 80-90% of Russian verbs into the past tense by following these rules.